Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to US Open Men's Final Eve, as it is here in Europe, at least anyway, in terms of it being evening. It's also just hours away from the women's final, which will be coming up live on the channel later on today. We'll have Matthew bringing you live commentary of Aryna Sabalenka against Amanda Anisimova. Feel free to make comments on that in the live chat, but this will be a preview focused on Jannik Sinner against Carlos Alcaraz. Welcome all the members, by the way. This is, of course, a members-only live stream, which will later on be converted into a couple of videos for the broader audience at large, but for now, in terms of being just for members only. So you're a member, you're watching, and you're doing it live. Why don't you get in the comment section? Oh, and also hit that like button. Okay, promo stuff done. Jannik Sinner against Carlos Alcaraz. Are we surprised? Not really. I mean, some people were saying, like, you could tell that this was going to be the final from, you know, the second or third round onwards. Well, to be honest with you, I think you could have told this was going to be the final from probably 2, 3, 4, 5 months onwards. It's unbelievable. We wait all day for an Alcaraz-Sinner final, and then 3 come along at once. In terms of, we had it in the French Open, Wimbledon, and now here in New York. Loads of stats as well flying around on the internet regarding the uniqueness of this encounter. Coffee sip. In terms of the fact, I think it's the first time in Open era history that we've had all 4 Grand Slam finals in 1 year occurring with the top 2 seeds. Of course, we had the top 2 seeds in those 3 finals I just mentioned, with Alcaraz at 2 and Sinner at 1. But we also, in Australia, when we had Zverev was the number 2 seed there, for example, etc. So yes, Sinner against Federer was the 1 and 2 seed. Also, I think it's the first time in the Open era history where we've had 3 consecutive Grand Slam finals with the same pairing as well. What else can I tell you? Well, let's share some stuff on the screen with you right now that's out there in the Twitter sphere. Another Sinner Alcaraz final is booked this time at the US Open. The era has well been underway. Also, by the way, they've now played each other at the US Open. They've played each other, obviously, at Wimbledon, the French Open. They've not yet played each other at the Australian Open, but I think it's only a matter of time. And if you think about, you know, the Big 3 era, we went their entire careers without Nadal and Federer playing at the US Open. So, yeah, big respect here for Nole, by the way. That's a nice tweet there from Carlos regarding yesterday's encounter, of course. That was a straight sets win. Let's have a look as well at Alcaraz's run to the final. I was just saying about how, you know, predictable it was. And of course, no one has ever won. Alcaraz is one of only 4 men to reach a US Open final without dropping a set since the year 2000. So Federer in 2015, Nadal in 2010, and Leighton Hewitt in 2004. And I think no one has ever done it. As you see here, Alcaraz could become the first man to do this at the US Open. That's a pretty remarkable thing, that no one's ever won the men's title without dropping a set. Well, Alcaraz, I don't think we'll do it, because I don't imagine this being a straight sets thing, but we'll get to the prediction at the end. Yeah, back to Alcaraz's run, by the way, to the final. And of course, it included a opening round win against Riley Opelka. I remember Damien being a bit concerned about this encounter, but to me, I always thought you just need to get 1 break of serve against Riley in each set and you're done. And that's exactly what happened. I saw Riley off the ground against Comisania in Cincinnati, I think it was, that was the big tournament, basically, the last big tournament before the US Open. And I thought, yeah, this Riley is not going to do much damage at the US Open as soon as he comes up against a half-decent opponent. Comisania beat him that day, by the way, in 3 sets. And Alcaraz did so in 3 sets too, albeit, of course, that's straight sets at a major because it's best of 5. Okay, Alcaraz Bellucci, it was just a non-event. Darderi, by the way, was brushed aside probably more easily than you might have imagined. Rinderknecht did cause him some trouble, but again, Alcaraz did not lose his serve until yesterday. The Lehecka performance was probably the most polished of all, given the nature of his opponent. He did lose his serve once yesterday. He was down a break in the second set, But once he got it back on serve, it did feel like game over. And a couple of words on Novak Djokovic. Is it his last US Open ever? Maybe. I would even go as far as 50-50 on it being his last US Open ever. I have circled Wimbledon 2026 as a goodbye for Novak. Could be wrong. And by the way, it could be a goodbye lifting the trophy. On grass in particular, I think he has a chance. He might even skip the clay court season, but I'm not sure. I think he wants to win some titles. He's going to play the Athens event in the 250. He's been very much behind this in terms of promotion. It's a bit of a weird juxtaposition there because, he's obviously a proud Serbian, and yet Athens has taken the 250 away from Serbia. I think there's some political shenanigans going on there that we'll get into some other time for sure. But anyway, Djokovic said that he wants to play that 250. Honestly, that could be his only event for the rest of the year. But he did say in his press conference yesterday, he'd still like to pick up some trophies. So I do think that is a significant. I think he wants to win one or two more titles before he bows out. He's obviously got over the 100 mark. He'd love one of those titles, of course, to be a Grand Slam. But on the Novak level, I think yesterday's result, we could see it coming. Regarding Djokovic's run, I actually think it was quite an impressive win over Lerner TN, considering how many physical issues Djokovic was having and the nature of the opponent. I think TN was a really tough first round for him. The draw, in my opinion, unlike Damien, I do think it did open up a little bit with the demise of Mickelson and Korda, among others. So he comes up against players such as Cam Norrie, who he can normally beat in his sleep. He did lose a set to Cam, by the way, en route to that semi-final. Taylor as well should have won that match, in my opinion. I was certainly taking it to 5. Taylor had breakpoint opportunities at the end of the first set, which he should. I had so many breakpoint opportunities, but I think 9 before he eventually broke. And Taylor is someone who Novak normally is very comfortable against. Remember that 2023 quarterfinal they had. So I think the signs were there. I remember watching another one of his matches, I think in the second round against Federer, and it was like I was watching a match in slow motion. It was a really plodding affair. And I think he even might have dropped a set against Federer as well. So there were signs. And regarding Novak and long term, I just think, I know he would like to play the Olympics in 2028. And who knows, maybe he can in the doubles. But I do think that it's not going to be long before players like Ben Shelton, Zverev, Mensik maybe are coming past him, and that's the moment. That's the light bulb moment. I think even if he has a big gap between him and he even said in his press conference 5 sets against Sinner or Alcaraz, forget it. 3 sets maybe, but forget it. But he might not have to play either of them. Who knows? To win a slam, I mean, certainly at Wimbledon anyway, I think it could be a chance. Okay, let's move back to Carlos anyway and his level. Probably his most consistent, I think almost certainly his most consistent and impressive run to a slam final to date. Of course, he's only lost 1 Grand Slam final, has Carlos, and that did come against Jannik Sinner in their most recent Grand Slam encounter. Let's have a look at Sinner's path to the final. A little tricky in some ways, I think. I think obviously Kopchiva not really having a serve, that helps. And I think it was always going to be a comfortable win for Jannik. But I think Popyrin for the second round is about as tough as it goes for the number 1 seed. Shapo, playing some of the best tennis of his career, was a difficult opponent. Shapo was up a break in that third set and may have some regrets about not pushing it 5. Bublik was a banana skin for Jannik, and luckily for Jannik, a certain Alexander turned up. When Alexander gets down on the scoreboard, especially in the second set, you do realize that it's good night Vienna, and that's how it turned out. Musetti, I think, was never going to be a threat, and I think that's a nice quarterfinal opponent for Jannik. Whereas the semi-final, I guess, Felix, not too bad, but he does drop a set. So in a way, this is the kind of score lines that we might be expecting from Carlos Alcaraz. If I didn't tell you who had these score lines, but if I said straight sets, 4 sets against Shapo and was down a break in the third, straight sets, real battle against Felix in the semis, 4 sets, some doubt, could have been 5. If I said that was the run of one of these 2 players, you would be telling me Carlos Alcaraz. Just you'd be putting your mortgage on it if you had a mortgage, but you'd be putting some money on it if you had some money. Be gamble aware. Anyway, you know what I mean. That's how I view that particular run. Anyway, it is what it is. Let's have a look at the head-to-head. I do also want to get some tennis insights, and I mean from the Tennis Insights website as well, or their database. I've just been in contact with them. We've got a 9-5 head-to-head here for Carlos. They've played a lot of times this year. As I said, it's been a long. We're waiting all that time for a Grand Slam final between the two, and now we're getting our third consecutive one. Of course, the most recent encounter was in Cincinnati, and there we had a very unwell Jannik Sinner, 5-love down in the first set and retiring. Remember, we're getting all the stats out about the last time he was bageled. But by the way, some, of course, might call it 10-5 because they want to include the challenger match that they had in 2019. I know Damien would be very keen for that. Deluded Steve less so. But anyway, 9-5 or 10-5 doesn't make too much difference. But I almost want to probably just hone in on sort of post-puke Sinner, as in like the new Jannik Sinner, the Jannik Sinner of 2023 onwards, perhaps. In fact, I think we can even skip Miami and Indian Wells and think about Beijing onwards, because this was when we got the new Jannik Sinner, basically. And so he's got 2 wins from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-2 here. Again, it looks like there could be a matchup problem for Jannik, but I really don't think so when we start to go into detail regarding some of these matches. So that one in Indian Wells, it's the absolute best conditions for Carlos Alcaraz on the tour, even better than some of the clay court tournaments. Indian Wells will always be like a second home for Carlos, and it was 3 sets, and Jannik Sinner got injured in the third. So, you know, some things to think about. Roland Garros, 5 sets, could have gone either way. Carlos, in fact, did go away at various points in that match. I think in the first set in particular was a long way off Jannik's level. And yeah, but 5 sets, Carlos, we know, can make a difference. And it did that day. I think had it been a 3-setter, he almost certainly would have lost. Beijing final was a paper thin difference between the two. And if we saw Carlos emerging constantly as the winner with paper thin margins, and by the way, they had another one, of course, memorably at Roland Garros, then maybe that is a pattern. Maybe if we go into a 5th set, for example, and we know Jannik has never won a match that went beyond 4 hours, maybe then that does tip the balance in Carlos's favor. But there's by no means guaranteed that we're going to get to that stage. Jannik Sinner, by the way, on 2 separate occasions against Carlos has had match points and not won the match, which is, considering they've played 14 times, so 2 out of the 14, 1 in 7. It's a pretty high percentage of matches where Jannik has had match points and not taken the glory. Obviously, the other one was US Open quarterfinal of 2022, an absolute legendary match that, honestly, if we get that tomorrow, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I do feel, by the way, in terms of this matchup, though, as well, Carlos is having to stretch a little bit more. I think because the margin that Jannik plays with just feels like he's a bit more in control, albeit that yesterday against Felix, that sort of crown slipped slightly. Back to these last few matches anyway, and how I feel this 6-2 margin feels a bit different. The Rome match, for example, that they had earlier this year was also another example of Jannik. That was his first tournament back on the tour. I always felt that with a few more matches, that result would have been pretty different. Maybe 3 sets, maybe goes Jannik's way, would be far more competitive than a second set, which was 6-1 in Carlos's favor. Carlos, by the way, serve. Quietly and confidently, his serve has improved throughout the year. We remember the adjustments he made pre-Australia, and there was a lot of gushing about serve bot Carlos. And then there was some, he shouldn't have changed his serve because, of course, he went out quarterfinal to Novak Djokovic. But I think now we are seeing the fruits of it. I mean, in that final, I remember on the clay in Rome, he's hitting aces and serve botting on clay against Jannik Sinner in Rome, probably the best return on the tour. And then we saw the fruition of what I'm saying in terms of the fact that Jannik just needed a few more matches. And we saw that in the opening 2 or even 4 sets against Carlos Alcaraz. Jannik Sinner, over the first 4 sets, was easily the better player and probably should have won that final. Of course, we know all about the 3 match points that came and went, and the serving for the title as well that came and went, and just how close it was just until that deciding set tiebreak. Then in Wimbledon, I actually went into that Wimbledon final thinking, you know what? This is where Jannik does show that actually there have been some asterisks and anomalies regarding the previous losses. He showed it. In fact, could well have won that in straight sets. He was up an early break in that first set, but wasn't able to hold on to that. And some Alcaraz brilliance at the end of that first set helped him win it. But sets 2, 3, and 4, Carlos didn't know how to win points, and he lamented to his team during the match to testify to that account. Then the final in Cincinnati, we can just pretty much write off in terms of Jannik obviously not feeling well. So, yeah, until this group of matches, or even maybe more recently, the 2025 group of matches, maybe we were seeing something that Carlos could provide that would trouble Jannik. But right now, I actually feel as though it's the other way around. It's Jannik posing more questions of Carlos than Carlos of Jannik. And that's my thoughts on this encounter in a nutshell. I'm going to come to my prediction in a moment. But first of all, I said I was going to share some stuff from Tennis Insights. This, of course, is across the ATP Tour. And these are Jannik Sinner's insights. The first column is when playing against Alcaraz. The second is, this is interesting. So this is Jannik Sinner against Alcaraz and the rest of the tour. So Sinner against Alcaraz, his serve quality goes down, as in his serve is still probably the same, but Alcaraz is obviously doing much better on return because his serve quality against Alcaraz is 7.7. The rest of the tour, 8.2. And I cannot emphasize just how big a gap that is. Interestingly, his return quality goes up against Alcaraz compared to the rest of the tour. So he's obviously someone who hasn't really had big issues with the Alcaraz serve. So that's an interesting thing. That'll be something to keep an eye on tomorrow. I think he's going to get more serves back in play than Carlos is used to, and he's probably going to get more serves back in play with interest than Carlos is used to. Carlos, by the way, Jannik Sinner in attack, a percentage of points in attack, 25% against both Alcaraz and the rest of the tour. That's also kind of interesting. Something that Tennis Insights would like to bring to our attention is his drop in serve quality, which I highlighted against Carlos, and his drop in conversion points. That's points when won in attack during the point. So that's interesting. That's obviously a testament to Carlos's defense. Same table here for Carlos. Carlos's serve quality against Jannik is slightly down, 7.7 compared to 7.9 for the rest of the tour. So Carlos's serve quality is fairly consistent. Also, though, in terms of in attack, same table for Carlos, you can see he raises his game versus Sinner in terms of his shot qualities, and particularly with the backhand. That's really interesting as well, that Carlos raises his game against Jannik. Jannik's level is like that throughout, whereas Carlos raises his level. Hi, Ashley. Great to see you here. And she's saying, Vamos, Carlitos. I guess that's a clear suggestion that she is supporting the Spaniard in this final. Would be great to get your predictions very quickly before we bring this stream to a close. And I'm going to come to mine right now. Maybe you read between the lines. If it goes 5, I think you have to back Carlos. Can Carlos take it to 5 sets? Carlos's serve improvements will give him a slight advantage. His ability to raise his game against the better opponents will also give him an advantage. Interesting, that's kind of a flip, because I think 3 years ago, it was the other way around. It was Sinner raising his game against Carlos compared to the rest of the tour. But now I think it's almost the other way around. Carlos is playing the best tennis of his career. Jannik, you could probably say that for the last 2 years. I don't think there's been many dips. I've got two outcomes in my mind. Jannik in 4 or Carlos in 5. I do not have a Carlos Alcaraz US Open title First ever man in history to do that without dropping a set. Carlos in straight sets, no. So yeah, it's either Jannik in 4 or Carlos in 5. By the way, you can see Zach's name just here. That's because he's also given me a video clip as part of the preview. You'll see that later on today, I'm sure, as part of our package that I wrap up. I'm going Jannik Sinner in 4. I do think that there's some more doubt. I have more doubt about this. If you'd have asked me this 2 weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, I would have confidently predicted a Jannik Sinner win, and I predicted him to win the title, beating Alcaraz in the final when we did the prediction videos pre-tournament. But given the paths and the way the two players are playing, I think that there's a stronger case for Alcaraz to win the final. But I am sticking with my original prediction of Carlos Alcaraz to be the runner-up and Jannik Sinner to be the winner. And I'm going to go with Jannik in 4 sets. Maybe 5 if it's quick. I do think the 4-hour thing is a significant thing. But anyway, you've heard my prediction. Jannik Sinner in 4 sets.
What's going on, guys? We are back for another Alcaraz preview. This time we're previewing the US Open Final. They met at the French Open Final, where Alcaraz took it in 5 sets. They met at the Wimbledon Final, where Sinner took it in 4 sets. And it was just 3 weeks ago we were having these conversations in a preview going into the Cincinnati Final. But unfortunately, that match did not deliver. Weren't even able to complete a set as Sinner fell ill on match day. And going into that match, I was probably in the area of 53-47, maybe even 55-45 with an edge to Sinner. I just think on hard courts, he'll always have the edge no matter what sort of track it is, slow, hard, fast, hard, medium, fast. I think it'll always go to Sinner, just that edge. But Alcaraz has looked, I guess, Sinner-esque in this tournament, where he hasn't dropped a set. And typically we're used to seeing those dips. And yeah, there's been a level dropping at times, the second set, early in that second set against Djokovic. But Alcaraz was quick to turn it around, as he does well. And think about that tiebreak. He won those big points and was able to carry on with not any physical problems at all this tournament. Very quick matches. And on the other side, Sinner has been a machine, of course. But we are coming off of his biggest test, which was against Felix Auger-Aliassime. Ended up going 4 sets, which is a surprise in and of itself. But what I did think about that match is that the Felix Auger-Aliassime forehand did a lot more damage than I thought going into it. He's obviously serving really well and hitting the forehand, the +1 really well the last 2 weeks, Felix has. But it did work, and it gave him some opportunities against Sinner. He was the one to create the most break points against him. And that actually gives me a little bit more maybe hope or just belief that Alcaraz has a lot more of a chance, as opposed to 53-47. I'm more on the 51-49, maybe even 50-50 going into this match. I think Felix's defense and ability out of the forehand corner was really pivotal in that match. And I think Carlos has that ability to defend easily, get out of his corners quickly, and has the rally tolerance and the shot-making ability to finish points. And that's what it's going to take against Sinner.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.